All right, welcome to Ghost Tales, where we have some fun talking about paranormal experiences in haunted Hampton Roads. And with me today is author Joe Tennis. He is
Hey,
joining us from from the Blue Ridge Mountains. Hello, Joe. How are you doing
hello,
today?
Ashley Knight.
He is author of several books, including Virginia's Blue Ridge Highlands. You were born here in Hampton Roads. You went to school at where? Kempsville High?
Kempsville High School. Yeah, I'm a Virginia Beach native. And,
Yeah,
a lot of people, they always say that everybody at one time or another lived in Hampton Roads, but nobody was ever from there. But I did live there. And
you
I've stayed
did.
in touch with Hampton Roads basically through all the years that I've been out in the mountains. But I've been over in the Blue Ridge Mountains for about 35 years. Went to college out at Radford University.
Yeah.
And then slowly migrated it down to the Tennessee Virginia border out in the South Fork of the Holston River Valley. So it's actually where some of my ancestors settled when
Oh,
just
really?
that part of Tennessee was known as North Carolina
Awesome.
back in the
Awesome.
1700s.
And you used to write for the Virginian Pilot?
I did, yeah. Back in the early 1990s, I did some work for the old Virginia Beach Beacon, the Norfolk Compass, the Clipper, and did oh gosh, everything from crabbers in Virginia Beach to motorcycle clubs and Boy Scouts and churches and all kinds of fun stories. And I was an intern down on the Outer Banks in
Mm.
Nags Head back in the summer of '92. So had a lot of fun with that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So talk about why did you start writing books dealing with, ghost tales and all this fun stuff?
Well, the first book I did just barely had any ghosts in it at all. It was called Southwest Virginia Crossroads. And I kind of started working on that book way back around 1994. And it didn't come out until 2004. And I kind of put it down and came back and everything else. And that one kind of branched off. And it's just about as soon as it was done, I came up with another book idea about Highway 58. And Highway 58, I grew up right along 58, Virginia Beach Boulevard,
Hmm.
and that goes through Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Suffolk, Portsmouth, all the way out. And ultimately, that became this book here, along Virginia's Route 58, True Tales from Beach to Bluegrass. And this book has some ghost tales in it. And when I got to chapter 2 of this book, I was at the Cavalier Hotel. And that's when I met one of the bellmen, and we were talking about the ghost of Adolph Coors. And he said,
Hmm.
"Well, I don't know that much about the ghost of Adolph Coors, but I will tell you what happened in the kitchen one night." And so that story's in here. And then I also talked, um, as time went on, this book originally was released as Beach to Bluegrass.
Hmm.
And it came out in '07, and then it was re-released about 9 years ago, 9, 10 years ago, and as this version. And that one ultimately has 10 ghost tales in it. And so ghost tales, there's 58 stories in that book. Not all of them are ghost tales,
Hmm.
but 10 of them are. There's also about 10 Civil War stories in that book. So there's haunted hotels in there. There's the Cavalier, there's Berry Hill, South Boston. And then right up the road from me is the Martha Washington Inn in Abingdon, Virginia, where there are so many ghost tales, I had to spread them out over several different books.
Oh,
You
wow.
have you have the musical ghost, the ghost that plays the violin, the ghost of Beth, and the little story behind that is the Martha is kind of like the Cavalier of this area. Jimmy Carter stayed there, Bill Clinton stayed there, so you had a lot of famous people across the streets. The Barter Theater, the
Hmm.
State Theater of Virginia, and it's also haunted. And that's also in the book about the ghost of Robert Porterfield, who was an actor who started that theater in 1933.
Oh, wow.
And he died in 1971, and he is still there watching over the place. And they find little notes that seem to be written by him. They see him sitting in his gray sweater up in the balcony.
Wow.
He just loved the place. And the Martha Washington was originally built in 1832 as a home for Patrick Henry's niece,
Hmm.
and it was a mansion. And then in 1858, it became a girls' school. And 2 years, 3 years later, Civil War breaks in, and then it becomes a hospital. And so you have a lot of stories associated there with bloodstains that'll never get washed away. And you've got um, also just, again, the musical ghost. There's just the ghost now of ghostly cats and just all kinds of great things. So,
Yeah,
um,
tell me about the musical Ghost. Is that the one you were talking about earlier, the one who plays the
and
violin?
that's Beth, yeah, and Beth kind of goes right into the book that I ultimately did this one, which is the newest book, "The Ghostly Tales of Virginia's Blue Ridge Highlands."
Hmm.
And this little book is kind of for kids of all ages, and she's the last story in there. And so the musical Ghost is a lot of fun. So there was a Union spy that came into the old hotel, and he was dying, and he said, "Play something, Beth. Play something. I'm going to die." Well, Beth got out her violin and she started to play. And then they say today on either full moon nights or moonless nights, I found it two different ways in the accounts. And it's she's still up on the third floor playing her violin. And
Uh,
so another story, it's in the book, and I'll go ahead and throw this in there because it's always been a lot of fun when I have given speeches, is um, one night there was a man and he said, "I've heard it, I've heard it, I've heard your musical Ghost." And he went down and told the front desk clerk, and she was like, "Oh gosh, that's just something in the brochure. Sir, there's no ghost here. Don't worry about it. We're okay." And he says, "No, no, no. I'm hearing that violin music. By God, it's here. Come up, come help me, help me, help me." Well, she goes up there, and one of the bellmen go up there, and there's a maid still there. She's up there. They're all standing outside, and they're all outside this room, and they're like, they ain't hearing nothing. They're just like there. And then all of a sudden they hear this music. They hear this violin. They're all looking at each other like, oh. Well, the skeptic, the lady at the front desk, she goes running down to the front desk and she starts looking through all the guest registers and everything. And she finds out that this man is staying in this room. And in this room where he's hearing the music was a concert violinist scheduled to play later that night at Emory and Henry College, which is about 7 miles north of Abingdon, Virginia. So he was hearing the concert violin. So you can believe in ghost tales or not. I believe in ghost tales. I have had some
yeah,
experiences.
you've tell me about the experience that you've had. You was it at a hotel or was
It
it?
was, well, my daughter actually saw something on the grounds. She witnessed something on the grounds of the Martha Washington, and she's gone and helped me with projects all on the way. She's wonderful, Abigail. And but what I ended up experiencing primarily was at the Reynolds homestead where R.J. Reynolds was born, and that is one of the stories that I write about in Route 58. And I'd actually gone out there to speak on this book. And I went out to Patrick County, Virginia. Patrick County, so to kind of give you some geographics, kind of know where Danville is, right? So we just go straight over from Suffolk and Virginia Beach
Mhm.
on 58, right there at the center of the state. That's Danville, last capital of the Confederacy. Next town over is going to be Martinsville. And then the next over from that is when the Blue Ridge Mountains really start to take off, and that's Patrick County, Virginia, which was named for Patrick County. And it was named for Patrick County, named for Patrick Henry. And Henry County was also named for Patrick Henry.
Yes.
Okay. So I stayed there. I got it. So I stayed there. I stayed there at the Reynolds homestead, and they said, "Hey, we want you to come out and give a speech, and we'll give you some gas money, and we'll give you some food. We'll throw in the refrigerator. You just stay in the old house." I said, "Stay in the old house too?" "Oh yeah, there's an apartment upstairs. It's fine. There's a little bed and everything."
Hmm.
Well, I show up there, and I'd been out at Galax, Virginia, and I'd done a book signing. I'd stopped off and done an interview for newspapers. I'd worked in newspapers for 35 years. And I did an interview, and then I went on, and finally I started showing up, and here it's about dark. And there was a Capalta tree, which is a very eerie kind of tree right out front. It looked like it wanted to grab something or somebody.
Oh yeah.
And I go in, and I have this key that I found in the mailbox. And I go in, and just as soon as I turned that key, I felt this sensation on the back of my neck. It was like heat. And it was starting to get a little cool. Now, this was June, but it was starting to get a little cool.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, what's going on? And I walked in this house, and I felt, I'm not supposed to be here. I felt like I was breaking into somebody's house. But I was supposed to be there. I had the key. And I go in, and there's like the museum exhibits downstairs. So I go in, and I go up the stairs, and I'm just like, boy, every dang detail, everything. It was just like being an 8-year-old kid going, what am I doing? And every last detail of the wallpaper, the walls, the stairs. I was picking up on everything. I got so sensitive. And I went in and stopped off the bathroom. A mouse runs across the floor. I come out of the
Oh
bathroom.
my gosh.
I walked this cold spot. It felt like going in a refrigerator. And then I'm kind of feeling like something's in the house. So I call home, tell my wife, I said, hey, what's going on? And she says, if something's in there, you better get the heck out of there. So I did. And I left. I drove out to Martinsville, Virginia. And I thought, all right, I'm going to stay overnight. Well, now I'm like scurrying around, and it's like getting close to $100 to spend the night. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, wait a minute. You're nuts. You're going to blow a stack of money on your idiotic stuff. Is it just be a man, go back and stay in the house. And I did, and I came back in, and I went in, and I turned the lights on, and I slept, and I had this radio blasted. So I slept with the radio and the lights on. And the next morning, this lady, Beth, she called, and she was the one who hired me to come out. And she said, hey, Joe, how you doing? You ready to talk this afternoon? And I said, yeah, I guess. You okay? Uh-huh. How did you sleep, Joe? Well, I kind of felt like something else was here. And she goes, oh, Joe, 1 out of every 3 people have that experience.
Oh, God.
There was once a lady who was laying in the bed, and all of a sudden she felt this elderly man just grabbing her, trying to pull her out of the bed. And then she starts going about how this other lady who was an artist in residence stayed there for a month, and she was so freaked out. She went around the graveyard and talked to all the dead people and said, look, y'all, you're going to have to calm this thing down. I'm going to be here for a while. I cannot put up with this. The director, this is in 2009. The director said, honey, the same thing happened to me, but I can't go on the record about it because, it's just.
Oh, gosh.
And she said, you need to write another book. That's what you need. You need to write another book. So I ended up coming up with this one, Haunts of Virginia's Blue Ridge Highlands. That was the first story that I got for that. And this one is my best-selling book of all time. I've been around a lot of places with it. It's got a lot of spooky stuff. Mm-hmm. The very last story in here is about the Reynolds homestead. I tell it in first person, and then I tell a longer version in the new one, The Ghostly Tales of Virginia's Blue Ridge Highlands. So it's
oh my goodness,
absolutely just a lot of fun.
That's a roller coaster ride.
I got into this, and one of the other stories I did was on the Mountain Lake Hotel, where Dirty Dancing was filmed.
Yeah.
And that's the longest story in the book. And it's actually updated in Ghostly Tales. So this is kind of supposed to be the adult version, mm-hmm. and this is supposed to be the children's version of the same book. But when I did this one, the children's one, I kind of had some leftover stories, and there were several stories that I wanted to kind of take and twist and turn, and then others that I wanted to just update, such as Mountain Lake. Because usually once a book comes out, then I go out and I do like a tour or whatever and do some signings, and the next thing you know, somebody says, you want to know what happened to me? Well, I tell you what happened to me. That lady who owned the hotel, now she done come out here one time, and I look up at that window, and right in that window, she was right there, and she was just right. I said, what'd you do? I just got scared, and I just ran away. So I put notes down on all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Mary Moody Northern. Am I getting too animated for you, Ashley?
Well, you're keeping everybody awake, that's for sure, if everybody's trying to sleep. This does air at 9:30 at night, so you're keeping everyone awake.
You got them ghosts.
You have a captive audience.
Wake up, y'all.
But talk about the Dirty Dancing. Is there a condensed version you can tell us?
Yeah, Mary Moody Northern, it was her daddy's place, and the Mountain Lake Hotel had actually gone back into the 1850s, and that was known as Salt Pond Mountain. And then it became Mountain Lake a little bit later on, and there was all kinds of different owners that got to that. She is supposed to still be basically watching the place, and she doesn't want the place changed too much. And one of the things that they did for like a long time was that they did not have any televisions in the hotel. She didn't want that. Wow. And she also had room number 100, which was her home away from home. The other experience that I had that I thought was somewhat that I've documented in these books or just talked about is when I walked into this room, it was just like, couldn't breathe. It was just like heaviness. It's like the humidity that you talked about that you had when you lived in Florida, when you grew up in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It's this, and it's the same thing that you got in Virginia Beach, except that it was this. And I don't know how many days I was out cutting grass as a kid all over Kempsville and stuff like that. And just like, you can't breathe because it's just like, it's that thick. But see that it wasn't humidity. It was just this heaviness. It's just like you felt that something else was in that room, that there was something there. And I talked to one guy who there was a cabin at the far end of the lake. And he said that he would go out there and he would sometimes see the face of a woman inside that cabin. And he said he went back and he worked there. And he said he went back out and he started moving furniture around and moving this and moving chairs and all kinds of stuff. He said, all right, let me see if I can figure this out. Why is there something in that window? He tried everything he possibly could to get that to work, to see if he could actually make the face. He took all these pictures and stuff and then never did. And then right out of the blue, about a year after this happened, he looks up again. There she is, staring at him. The same thing with the waitress. And if you watch the movie, if you see Dirty Dancing, she's in that dining room where the pickpocket scene was, and where the dining room in the hotel. Half that movie was filmed up at Mountain Lake, and that's in Giles County, just on the other side of Virginia Tech. Okay. So that's a little part of it. It's just that she's still there and she's kind of watching over the place. And she just manifests and shows up from time to time.
Oh my goodness. How fun. I love that. Okay, we're going to talk about theaters now because it's I love that nearly every theater is haunted. Talk about the Grand Theater in Roanoke.
Well, the Grandin Theater is just kind of got, little spooky elements to it. And there's just like, little elements to it that just have, there's just certain like little voices and stuff that they've heard there. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same thing at the Lyric Theater in Blacksburg. And sometimes it's a little sketchy as to what's going on. The Paramount Theater down in Bristol, actually one of the Miss Virginia pageants was actually held there. And it's actually on the Tennessee side of State Street. And I live not too far from downtown Bristol, and that's the town that has Tennessee on one side and Virginia on the other on its main street. Yeah. And the Geico Gecko was walking back and forth and on that road. A lot of people remember that commercial when they came out and filmed that here. I think the thing about theaters in general is that they exhibit a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. And the actors have a lot of energy. The audience has a lot of energy, and all of that is transported and it stays inside there. And it's something you and I were talking about before we, did this interview. Was where does all that energy go? And when you go into a home, you can feel the warmth, or you can go into a home and you can feel anger. Mm-hmm. And where does that energy go? And at some point or another, we have to continue to ask for the blessings and such. And that's the same thing with a theater. Hotels are kind of the same way. They're very transient. So you got people, obviously they're as transient as you can get because there's new people coming in and going all the time. Mm-hmm. There's one in Wise and one in Whitfield that I write about in the Ghostly Tales book. And the one at the Bowling Wilson Hotel in Whitfield has an elderly bellhop, and he's seen there. And this lady was saying, hey, saw this guy, and he stopped in here, and and another guy said that we saw this bellhop, and they were like, how could you do that? He died. No. They described him. They were like, no, he died. I sat down and talked to a whole lot of people just before the pandemic, and I don't know where all of them are now, but the owners of the Bowling Wilson Hotel were able to get, and I had a lot of first person accounts. It had been a bank and it had also been a hotel. So it had just some great stories there. The Inn at Wise is not far from the other University of Virginia. So you have the famous University of Virginia at Charlottesville. And then you have the other one far out there in Wise County, Virginia, almost in Kentucky. You're like about a half hour and you're over in the Kentucky mountains. And that one, the Inn at Wise, is I talk about the Laughing Boy, and that's where these kids were kind of like running through the hallways and stuff, and there were like these kids they fell over, and all of a sudden they heard this. They just heard this laughing boy, and they look around like, wait a minute, there's no kid here, but they heard this laughter of this kid. So it's kind of interesting.
Oh, that's
The
crazy.
General Morgan Inn is one that I wrote about in my book called The Marble and Other Ghost Tales of Tennessee and Virginia, and that's this one again. So you can see this is the one that has the freaky boy with no eyes on the cover. And the General Morgan Inn is in my mother's hometown. My mother was a school teacher in Virginia Beach, and her hometown was Greenville, Tennessee. And the General Morgan Inn is across, kind of catty corner from where Andrew Johnson, the president after Abraham Lincoln, the 17th president, he lived there. And this old hotel has the ghost of Green Room Grace. And Green Room Grace is a waitress that still spins. So they will put spoons down and on the tables, and the ghost doesn't take the knives, it doesn't take the forks. They lose a lot of spoons. And they've attributed it to a ghost. It's a ghostly waitress that likes to reset tables. And I think one of the other ones that I really love is schools. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where colleges are always a lot of fun. Colleges are a little on the sketchy side at times if you're doing this kind of research as I do, and that I've written these kind of stories for magazines and newspapers and books over the years. Is that when you go to colleges, kids will just start telling stories. Mm-hmm. And I was at Lee's McRae College. It's another story I write about in the other book I haven't shown you yet, which is called Haunted Highlands. And Haunted, all the books have almost the same title. I did that purposely. No, I didn't really do it purposely. I came up with this title myself. So this is Ghosts and Legends of North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia.
Okay. And this will be, hold on just a second. I got to let you know, this has got to be our last story because we've only got about 2 minutes left with you here on this Zoom.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this one is one that's in North Carolina, and it is the ghost of Erie Emily. And so I went over and interviewed a girl, and she told me a story that was so crazy, it just didn't make any sense. So I didn't use it. But I went and used the ones that did make sense. What else can you tell me?
That's good.
Or what else do I need? What else can I need to tell you?
Okay, where can folks buy your books if they want to look into it?
They can get them on Amazon, and they can also get them at the Suffolk Visitor Center has the Route 58 book, and also the the Surf and Rescue Museum downtown, Barnes and Noble stores around Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, Prince Books in Norfolk. You can get them in a lot of those locations around Hampton Roads, but Amazon, you can definitely order them. If you're out here in the mountains, just a lot of the state parks have them, and a lot of gift shops out here have them.
Gotcha. So, yeah, and it's Arcadia Publishing, right?
Arcadia Publishing, and then also Hoot Books, which is the other publisher that republished The Marble and also Haunted Highlands. They were originally published by Backyard Books, but Arcadia Publishing is my primary publisher.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Well, it has been so much fun having you with us, Joe, and we will definitely have you back on again to talk about some more of these fascinating stories. If you'll come back, will you come back?
Sure. Okay. If we get the Zoom going.
It has been no problem whatsoever. We've loved having you here. Once we got it going, we're all good now. All right. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us. I really do appreciate it. And
thank you, Ashley. You've got a wonderful program.
Oh,
I really appreciate doing it. Thank you.
Thanks to guests like you that have made it what it is. So thank you. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Ghost Tales. And if you want to drop me a line about any experience you've had, you can email me at ashley.knight@wavy.com. And who knows, we may have you on the next Ghost Tales. So until then, we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.